Hey, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Talking to Artists. We're actually on episode 42 today. And Talking to Artists is really designed to be a casual conversation so that artists can understand a little bit more about some of the other things that artists are doing for the business of art, and collectors can get a bit of an understanding of what goes on behind the curtain, which is always kind of fun. So today we're going to be talking to Danielle Pare. Danielle is a Quebec artist. She does these really beautiful, loose landscape and floral painting, so I'm really looking forward to talking to her. And I first came across her because I bought one of her pieces from the Paula White Diamond show, and I have it proudly in my cottage, so I'm pretty excited about that. So it looks like Danielle is here, so I'm going to invite her to join. Looking forward to hearing more about her process. I just love buying a piece of art that I really know kind of nothing about, and you learn to love it more. Hi, how are you?
Hi,
You're sideways.
I'm sideways, of course. That's going to happen to me.
I think you just have to turn your phone. I think you'll be good then.
Not sure how I'm going to do this. Okay, well, I'll just hold it.
Or if you want to take the time to prop it, that's fine too. I did that too. I did a whole bunch of it because I thought you could actually do Instagram side by side, but learned that you can't.
Yeah, I'm not too good with this thing, and whatever.
It's great.
Let's do it like this.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just saying that, I'd seen your work around, but then I actually really saw it at the Paula White Diamond Square Foot show. And so I think I told you I bought one of those pieces because I had just bought a cottage for my parents. And so it just perfectly fit into the landscape up here. So it's got a proud place of honor by my fireplace.
Well, I'm thrilled about that. It's fun. I got invited by the Paula White Diamond Gallery to participate in that show, and I was very happy about it. And a lot of pieces sold. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she does a good job of curating, collecting pieces that kind of work together, but are all very different, which is really nice, so that you don't feel as an artist too that you're kind of, your work was looking like a lot of other people's work. So I think everyone did well there. Yeah, it was great. I ended up buying 4 pieces, actually. I kind of went crazy, and I'm like, I gotta stop. I don't have any more room.
That's great. Yeah, well, it was a nice opportunity because I've never shown in the the Greater Toronto area. So that's in Waterloo. But yeah, that was a good opportunity.
For sure. And so you're based in Gatineau, I think, right?
Yeah, Quebec? Gatineau. Yeah, we're right across the bridge from Ottawa.
Oh, nice. Okay, so pretty close. And so maybe talk a little bit about maybe your history as a painter. I don't really know anything about you. And so how you got started and what you're doing now. And that'd be great to know.
I've been painting for quite a while. I started painting in 1988. And I was working in watercolors, and I started showing in 1992. And at that time, I was also invited to teach watercolor. And I figured, well, I never taught before. Is this going to work? So I started teaching, and I had young babies and things like that. So one thing led to another, and I was teaching almost full time. So I did that for quite a few years. I worked in watercolors at least 10, 12 years. And then I started getting an itch to try something else. So I just started playing with acrylics, and I've been working in acrylics since then, since around 2000. Yeah. And I've been showing, sorry.
So I was going to say, so do you think that your style is very, very loose with your acrylics? Is that based in kind of the history of watercolor, or is that something that just sort of gradually evolved as you became a little bit more abstracted as you painted more?
Right. Actually, when I started watercolor, I had a style that was quite loose. And then I think because I was teaching so many techniques and things like that, it got sort of tighter. And when I started acrylics, they were a bit more traditional, if you want. I've never painted very realistically, more of a stylized. And I've been inching my way towards things that are a little bit more abstracted. But I don't do pure abstraction. I've tried, but my mind sort of doesn't want to go there.
Yeah.
So sometimes I paint more loosely. Sometimes it's a little bit tighter, but it all depends on the mood.
It's interesting to me that, I mean, normally people go from kind of tight realism to abstract. And so it's interesting
Right.
to me that you kind of, as you did more teaching, you got tighter and tighter and tighter, and then had to kind of, I guess, maybe re-embrace some of the looseness. And so
Right,
that's kind of an
right.
interesting trajectory.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing the past. Well, my work in watercolor always influenced my work in acrylics because that's how I started painting. So I still paint very thinly and very transparently, and I don't work with a lot of texture. The texture comes from the brush strokes that I have evolved with the years. So, like in watercolor, it's difficult to hide stuff, and it's difficult to hide stuff in my paintings also. So, if something goes wrong, I usually start over because, trying to hide it just creates texture and things I don't like in the painting. So I'd rather get rid of it and just start over again.
Yeah, I totally get that. 'Cause I'm a bit like that too, because I paint on the wood. If you put something down on the wood, it stains it. And so there's
Yeah,
sometimes you can recover it, and sometimes it's just like, I'm just going to put more and more time into something. It's just going to get worse and worse. I just have to call it a
exactly.
day.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm not the type to just over a painting and paint on top of it because the underlying texture will just ruin whatever I put on top of it. So I start
Yeah,
fresh.
it was very interesting because I hadn't actually seen your work in real life before. I'd seen it kind of on Instagram and stuff. And so when I got the piece, I was quite amazed at how smooth it is because it looks so textural. And I kind of love that almost optical illusion of your work. Like you
Right.
definitely have the sense of movement and texture, and yet when you have it in your hands, it's much smoother.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. There's some passages that are thicker. I tend to dilute my paint a lot because I worked in watercolor and water. I tend to do that a lot again with the acrylics. But sometimes there's nice thicker passages, and that's cool too.
And so do you typically then use traditional acrylics, or do you use liquid acrylics, or what's your kind of go-to?
Yeah, sometimes I'll start with because when I start very thin and like a wash, like a watercolor wash. So sometimes I start with liquid acrylics, but mostly I just dilute the regular ones, the heavy body ones. Yeah, but
That's
I always
interesting
look.
that you go to the heavy body and then you liquid it down as
Yeah,
opposed to.
yeah,
Well, you
but
like to give yourself a challenge.
of course. Why not?
That's right.
Why make it easy when I?
Yeah. No, I just find it so interesting because definitely, so for me too, I use the liquid acrylics. So the and I actually water it down with an airbrush medium. So it's really, really translucent.
Okay.
And then in the heavy body for the palette knife work. So it's got lots of texture. So I find it just fascinating that we use pretty much the same materials with such an incredibly different
Oh yeah.
result.
I mean, acrylics is so versatile. I mean, you can work like you would be working watercolors or very, very thick with mediums. It's the most versatile medium there is out there. So, and it's great because I mean, the colors really vibrate. If you like a lot of colors. Yeah. So
Hmm.
once I switched to acrylics, I never went back to watercolors.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess that's part of the journey. And do you teach now still or not?
I kept on teaching. When I switched to acrylics, I took a little breather because I was trying to work in a different medium and teaching watercolors, and I was having a hard time with that. So, but I took it up again, and I've been doing, well, the past years I've been doing more like workshops and weekend workshops and things like that in my studio. But I stopped last year because I do run, I have in my house a couple of suites that we rent on Airbnb.
Hmm.
So that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I
So,
bet.
so when I'm not busy with that, I'd rather be painting than teaching. So I think I
Yeah.
took my retirement from teaching.
Well, I think that's fair. Like, I think something can be a lot of fun for a while, and then when you've taken everything you want out of it, then it becomes a chore. And I think once something like that, especially when it's related to your art, becomes a chore, yeah, it's pretty dangerous to continue. I think you do have to stop and
Yeah, well,
remember the passion for the work.
right. It wasn't really a chore, but I mean, it was either teaching or painting. So
Right.
I've taught a lot and I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. I think because I taught so much and I started teaching early in my career, uh, I progressed really fast because to teach something, you really have to research it and learn about it, you know.
Oh yeah.
And you also learn a lot from your students. So yeah, that was a good
I
experience.
found it fascinating. I'm not a teacher and I'm not a very patient person, so I'd not make a good teacher. But I did do these things, these creative adventures. So they were basically art experiences for non-artists. And what I found the most fascinating is you really have to think about the language, and you forget how much you, as an artist, you've internalized about what you do and how you do it and why you do it. And then when you're teaching somebody, especially who doesn't have an art background, to have to kind of rethink that and refigure out how to articulate it.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting exercise.
Yeah, because you start doing things like instinctively, you know, you don't think about it, but when you're teaching it, you really have to explain it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes the language even such that you can kind of talk about tone or value, and you're talking to people who just don't, they know the words, but they don't really understand it to be able to actually kind of integrate it into their work. And I just find that was kind of, I mean, I think it does help you, like you're saying, to sort of inform a bit of your own work and start to be
Of
more
course.
conscious about some of the stuff you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, as I said, I've done it a lot and I enjoyed it. And just thinking about it, talking about it makes me sort of, oh, maybe I should do it again.
So
But
have you, I mean, now that COVID, obviously is with us for a little while longer, have you kind of considered doing kind of online teaching or?
no, there's a lot of people out there doing it and I think they're doing a good job. So no, I'll
Yeah.
just keep on painting.
Well, me too. And actually, I like the in-person person part of it too, as much as I like the experience of teaching, even within the creative adventures. So I thought the same thing. I like it. Feels like a bit of a different dynamic, and I'm not sure I'm going to selfishly get as much out of it.
Right, right. And teaching was good too because, well, you know, when you're an artist, you're working alone in a studio all day, and so teaching is a social output also. You know, you can meet people and exchange with people, and I've made a lot of friends through my teaching. Yeah, it's
Oh,
all
well, that's
good.
great. And so your work is inspired by nature, obviously,
Right.
and I'm assuming a lot of that is kind of inspired by where you live. I see a lot
Exactly.
of.
Well, the area here is surrounded by nature. I've always been a nature lover, going for walks and being in the woods and things like that. And I love birds and animals and flowers. And I'm an avid gardener also. So of course, my work's been influenced by that. I've worked a lot. I've done a lot of florals. Actually, I was mainly a floral painter, and I did a lot of still lifes before also with, more organized with fruits and flowers and things like that. And a couple of years ago, I started experimenting, going back a little bit to landscape. I used to do a lot of winter landscapes when I was painting in watercolors. So I started going back to that, and I really enjoy it. I find it's a nice break from doing flowers all the time. And I've done so many flowers, now it's like, how do I do them differently, you know?
Well, it's interesting too because there does seem to be quite a strong Quebec tradition of these winter landscapes with the bluey purple snow and the
Yeah.
vertical trees. It's interesting that you kind of integrated that, because I found your color palette as I was looking through is kind of these really soft like grays and blues and real neutrals for your landscapes, and then your flowers were these bright yellows and oranges and pinks and gray,
Right,
which I thought
right.
was kind of a lovely kind of
Yeah.
color combinations.
Yeah, it's like a split personality. I go neutral in the winter and then colorful in the summer.
So are you starting to get towards colorful as you're anticipating spring now?
Yeah, yeah, I'm starting to work a little bit more on florals and adding, well, I'm in a lot of yellow right now. So
Yeah, I noticed that. I love yellow. Yellow, that orangey yellow, cadmium yellow is just one of my favorites.
yeah, yeah, I say I put it on my toast, which is not true.
Yeah. But don't you find you always have those colors that somehow seem to sneak into every single painting, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I try to do a painting, well, either a painting without yellow or without blue, but they're my both go-to colors all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too. I was looking at your Instagram and you had had something that had all the dots, the different colors dots, which I assume was taken from the paintings. It looked as if there'd been a sort of a scan the painting, and then it was like almost this like the dot pattern of the sizes of the colors that you were using.
Oh, that's the thing they have. It's an app, and it analyzes what you've put on Instagram, and it gives you sort of your colors for the year or something like that. It's
oh, I thought it was quite interesting, because I thought it was interesting because of the fact that it was very much your winter colors. Like I didn't see a lot of the brights in there.
Yeah, well, it depends. But they have different options. You can choose sort of an option that shows more of your brighter colors or more neutral colors. So there's different things you can choose from.
Oh, that's cool. I'm going to try that. I think it'd be fun. Well, I know turquoise would be pretty strong, so that's not really going to get much of a surprise. Sure. Yeah.
I don't remember what it's called, but I'll look it up and send it to you.
And so how do you, I'm assuming you're a full-time painter except for the Airbnb. So how do you structure your day in terms of kind of obviously getting the business part done and the painting and customer conversations and all that kind of stuff?
Right. Well, I try to work every day, so I'm up early and have breakfast and get to the studio and work. I usually stop early afternoon because I'm tired and go for a walk and something like that. Often Sunday mornings I'll update my website and things like that. I'll do gallery deliveries when it's necessary, but yeah, it's mostly galleries take care mostly of the sales. I do have visitors sometimes that come to my studio, but most of that is done through art galleries.
So that kind of cuts down on some of the administration you have to do. Like you're obviously outsourcing the administration to the galleries, which allows you more time in the studio.
Yeah, and I used to do a lot of group shows, which you have to send pictures and this and that, and but well, there aren't any right now.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah, but I've been mostly concentrating on gallery sales more than group art shows in the past few years.
And so you haven't really had to kind of embrace the e-commerce digital stuff that a lot of artists have had to done during COVID then, I guess.
Not sure what you mean by e-commerce. Well, I post on Instagram and Facebook. That's about what I do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's interesting because I just think that a lot of artists have they've upped their game with Instagram and Facebook because it becomes a much more of a marketing vehicle since we're not sort of seeing people in person. But I've certainly noticed a lot of artists in the last year have then added a store component to their websites.
Right.
And there's always this balance between, do you want to do that and have to worry about all the administration and stuff that goes with it? Or would you rather kind of just work with the galleries and let them do their job and you can kind of be in the studio, right? It's kind of...
Right. Well, I have a website and it's important to have a website and I update it frequently, but I don't want a web store. I think it competes with the galleries, especially I have galleries representing me that are here in town. So, I want to let them do the sales, not, as I said, sometimes people will come to my studio, but mostly the sales will be done by the local galleries here.
Mm-hmm. And you were saying that other than Paula White Diamond, your galleries are primarily in Quebec then? So
well, I have one. I have one here in Gatineau in Aylmer, which I've been with for quite a while, and I one in Ottawa too, which is Santini Gallery, and okay. I've been with her a few years also. I've been in galleries in Montreal and Quebec City, but they closed, and I don't actively search for galleries. I work and I sell my work, and it's going good. So
don't mess with it.
Well, don't mess with it. And it's like most galleries I'm with or I've been with, they're the ones that saw me somewhere and contacted me and wanted to represent me, and so I just sort of go with the flow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, that makes sense. Well, I think especially nowadays with having no control over anything, that's all you can do is go with the flow, right?
Exactly, yeah.
It's just interesting. There seems to be almost a bit within the art world, a little bit of an invisible barrier between certainly Ontario and Quebec in terms of Quebec artists breaking into Toronto and Ontario, and then vice versa. And I'm not sure. I'm sure why it is. It just seems to be. It seems to be different than exporting into other provinces. Maybe it's the language. Maybe it's the style. Maybe it's the. I think the Quebec patrons
maybe.
seem to appreciate color and texture maybe a bit more. It's a different thing.
Yeah, well, Ontario artists use color and texture too.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it is the language barrier. I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have an answer to it either.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I've shown in at a gallery also in up near the Great Lakes. I forget the name of the city. But yeah, I've been around the block a little bit.
So what do you have planned next? Like if you're saying you're getting tired, a little bit tired of florals, are you kind of, I'm assuming that people love your florals, so it'd be hard not to do
Yeah,
them anymore, but
yeah.
are thinking of doing something else?
Well, I'm doing florals now. Last year I started doing more sort of skyscapes also, landscapes, but with the accent on sky and clouds and things like that. So that's sort of a new exploration for me. So I'll probably be doing some of these and some florals. This time of year is always sort of a slower time for me because when I switch from winter to spring, it's sort of, I don't know, there's always an adaptation and it's a bit harder for me to put out work. But it'll fall back into place. Looking for inspiration, I guess, and new inspiration brings in. I sort of work in. I like working in small series, if you want. You know, I'll get inspired by something and do a small series, and usually the work I do inspires me to do more work. Like I'll do a piece that I really like, and I say, okay, well, I'll explore this a little bit more, and so that's sort of the way it works out.
Yeah, well, that's a good way of doing it too. Like you sort of have, you play and figure out figure your way through the pieces and through something a little bit different and new while still trying to retain your look and feel so you don't lose your client base and your galleries aren't all of a sudden shocked by producing
Right.
something completely different, right?
What's
You make sure you
this?
manage that. Yeah, exactly. And so have you sort of changed the way you work sort of during COVID? Has it changed your general way of working, or is it just the...
Honestly, I've been making jokes about this and saying, hasn't changed my life. I'm in the studio every day. No, actually, it's giving me more time because the Airbnb business has been much slower. So, no, I've had more time. It's just less interaction with, friends and other artists and things like that's missing. But
Yeah.
for my work, actually, it's given me more time to work.
Well, and I think the bigger impact is the larger city. If you're in a larger city, you seem to be, have more impact in your day-to-day life just because the cities are closed down more than being in the country.
Right, right.
Or being kind of outside of the kind of the core of the city. Because my sister's in Vancouver Island and she's doing all this fun stuff. And I'm like, I can't do any of that stuff if I'm in the city.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've been pretty quiet here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the galleries have still, I mean, they were closed a little bit last spring, but they were open a good part of the year last year. So we did have good sales, and hopefully it will continue this year.
And so you're saying that you're an avid gardener, so that must really kind of inspire your work too in terms of color and design and inspiration.
Sure. Yeah. I've always had a lot of gardens. I'm trying to cut back on that a little bit also because I hurt everywhere when I garden. But love of flowers and love of color has inspired my work certainly a lot.
And so do you literally grow plants in your garden so that you can actually cut them and use them in your florals, or is it just sort of extrapolated?
No, not necessarily. I plant things I love, perennials. Yeah, perennials. And I just like doing a garden is like composing a painting also, you play with texture and different colors and shapes and things like that. So it's just, I think it's just an extension of my creativity.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily use the garden for painting, but I use the garden for creating, if you want.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah. And do you have like a favorite flower or a few things that you
Oh,
always put
well,
in?
I have a couple, but I've always I love daisies and I love tulips, and these are the flowers I've probably painted more.
Hmm.
Um, in the last few years, I started doing more mixed arrangements of flowers. I used to do paintings of just tulips or just daisies and things like that. But yeah, these are probably my two favorite. But I've painted a lot of kinds of flowers.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy gardening as well, and it's one of those things that in the last few years, I haven't really had the time because at the same time you're supposed to be gardening, you're also getting prepared for all these summer outdoor shows, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, so last year my garden looked really good. So now I have to kind of continue with that,
Yeah, I
hopefully.
mean, painting takes up a lot of time and energy, so it's somewhere along the line you have to choose between what you want to do and keeping time for painting
Yeah.
and the rest of your life also, you know.
Well, I mean, really, too, if you're a professional artist, painting is your full-time job. Like it's an amazing job, but there's the administration and everything else that goes around with having your time in your studio. And like with any job, you then have to figure out what you're doing with your spare time, gardening or spending time with family or hiking or whatever that happens on those off hours, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
that's the trick, right? Like the trick is if you're going to do it, you can't kind of go into the studio, for 2 days and paint for 3 hours. Like you have to really focus on
oh yeah,
putting that time in.
you have to put the time in. And what people don't realize is that we have to be good at everything. We have to be photographers, we have to be web designers, we have, marketers. We have to do it all, because if you start paying people to do that, I mean, no way you're going to make it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things to do. It's a lot of
Well, I
things
mean,
to
really,
learn.
really, artists are entrepreneurs, right? I mean, like
Right.
you say, you kind of have to have all these different pieces, and it's like there's always going to be things you're better at and not so great at, like I don't know,
Exactly.
HST taxes,
Oh my
filing.
God.
I'd love to outsource all that stuff.
Hate that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's an integral part of the business you have to incorporate into your studio time, right? So,
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, there's studio time, and then there's promotion time, and then there's tax time, and
yeah, and all the administration bucket that seems to take up a lot of time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that all goes into our work schedule, and people don't realize that especially when they look at a painting and they ask you how long it took you to make it.
Yeah.
I
Well, especially
always
if you have especially if you have a style like yours too, that it looks as if it's just like, oh, it can't have taken that long because it's only a few swipes, right? Not
right,
appreciating, first of all, the layers that go into it and the expertise to kind of get it to that point. And I love it when
right.
you're at those outdoor shows and people are like, well, if the painting only took this many hours and you're charging this much for it, this is your hourly rate. And you're like, I wish,
Right.
but no.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, I always tell people, I mean, a painting starts before you put a brush to the canvas. There's thinking of ideas, making sketches, mixing paint. There's a lot of things. Then you have to photograph it. Then you have to varnish it. Then it all counts.
Yeah.
As work.
I know. It's funny because actually it's almost like the actual painting piece of it is a small portion of the whole sort of level of what you have to do to get a painting from original conception out into the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you had one piece of business advice to give to an emerging artist, what would you say to them?
Wow. That's a big question. I find it that emerging artists are lucky these days because of social media. They have this opportunity to get their work out there instantly, and having people see it. Like when I started, we had none of that. I mean, we had maybe 2 group shows a year, you know. So I mean, you're painting and painting and painting, and you have a show and you sell a couple of pieces, and then you're 6 months again before someone
You hope it's not a
sees your work.
snowstorm on opening night, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, our progress was much slower than what people can have now. You know, you start posting on Instagram and get some likes, and someone likes your stuff, they'll buy it, and the gallery sees your things and they like it, and they might, you know, take you on. So that, I find that part is much easier for them. But mostly it's just, you know, take the time, do the work, learn the basics, and be true to yourself. That's when I come into my studio every morning, I say to myself, you know, it's been 30 years. And I say to myself, I'm going in the studio to learn to paint. And that's it. It's a lifelong journey. And
Yeah. I think it's really important, the point you made though about being true to yourself as well. Like, it's sort of, you have to develop a thick skin as an artist, and you have to appreciate no matter what you do, there's going to be people that love it, there's going to be people that hate it, and those people that hate it are often somehow love to be very vocal about why they think you have no talent and your work is crappy.
Right. Right.
So you have to be able to just let it roll over you and kind of go, okay, that's cool, that's your opinion. It doesn't affect, you know, what I want to do and how I feel like I want to communicate my vision to the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as I was saying before, social media is an advantage, but I think people have to be careful, because it can also be a disadvantage, because you're fed so much information and images about other people's work that I think, you know, it can influence your work in a way that's not true to you. I think a lot of...
Or you start to question. I think sometimes you start to question what you're doing. And
question what you're doing and compare your work to others. And a lot of people try to imitate others also. So that's dangerous. You know, that's always been difficult to overcome, you know, when you start trying to paint like someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was an interesting post on one of the Facebook groups I'm part of, and they were saying that an artist was really upset with a client of hers, because this client had taken one of her pieces of art that she really loved, and she sent it to one of those paint by numbers things to have it done. So then she was able to do a paint by numbers of this artist's work, right? And then she sent it to the artist, kind of going, "Oh my God, I'm so excited! I have one of your pieces." And the artist is like, "Holy shit! Like, do you have no sense of how completely illegal that is to steal someone's intellectual property?" And
yeah, well, people aren't aware of copyrights and things like that. You know, they're just not aware of it. Yeah.
And you know they're not aware of it because they send you these emails because they're so excited. So it's like, obviously, if they felt it was, you know, they weren't supposed to do it, they wouldn't do that. But yeah, I think that is one of the other challenges, that people kind of get the sense that if it's on social media, that somehow it's free game to take and use and stuff. And it's like, well, no, it's still, you know, it's still, the artist still owns the copyright. You don't have to actually formally copyright it. You still own the copyright. But it's also just invariably disrespectful just to steal someone else, lift someone else's stuff and print it off on your color printer and stick it on your wall, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can, ultimately, I'm not sure you can really stop it. Like, I know there are some artists that put a watermark on it, but honestly, I think if you're good at Photoshop, you could probably take that out if you wanted to anyway, so I'm not sure that's even worth the time. But anyway.
Well, there's so much stuff out there, like at Walmart or HomeSense, you know, that's printed on sort of cardboard and really cheap, and that people can put on their walls. So that's what a lot of people do. But
which I think if they want to do it, that's totally fine. I think it's just it's an understanding that there's a difference between that and a piece that's an original piece that someone has taken a lot of time and energy and thinking to kind of put together, right? So,
well, I think when people start buying original art, they really can feel and see the difference. I always say there's, you know, an original piece of painting has your energy in it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And once people, you know, there's a learning curve to that. And once people start buying real art, you know, original art, then they see the difference and they appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think that some of it too is some people who grew up around original art. Artists tend to be of that group too, where, you know, I don't know about you, but like I had original art in the house, and you know my parents had original art, so you kind of, that's what you're growing up with, so you kind of appreciate it right from a very young age. But other people don't, and so they have to kind of learn that in their own way. And I think that's again where, you know, outdoor shows and environments that are really not threatening to help them learn about kind of the
Right.
difference between original art is really valuable.
Right. And there's so much original art out there that it's easy for someone to, you know, to start collecting.
Yeah, exactly. Like things like these square foot shows where sure, you know, the work is reasonably priced.
Exactly.
And, you know, you can kind of start to build a collection and start to kind of get a sense of, after you live with the piece for a while, like what do you really love and where do you want to kind of continue your exploration for your collection, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I've had people come to gallery openings and tell me, this is the first time I come to a gallery, you know, I was always, you know, afraid before to go into a gallery and be, you know, just feel self-conscious or something like that. So people around us, you know, when I started painting, I didn't come from a family of artists or art collectors, but because I started painting, well, they started buying things from me. Well, I gave them a lot, but then they started buying from me and from other artists, you know, so that was sort of an education for them, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I guess that's the advantage of social media. It allows it to, the playing field's a bit more even, right? Like you don't have to go to a gallery now anymore. You can see the stuff
Exactly.
on your phone. And you can start to build your own sense of what resonates with you.
Yeah,
which is pretty fun.
Yeah, it's fun and easy to do.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we're kind of almost out of time. And I just wanted you, I'm going to ask you one, I always ask this question. So what would your big hairy ass goal be if money and time were no option?
To die with a paintbrush in my hand.
Oh, that's a cool answer. I haven't had that one before.
Yeah, no, I just want to keep on painting and just be healthy enough to do it, and being able to do it every day, and just feel free to express, you know, whatever I feel like expressing that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's the.
That's a good goal.
That's it.
I guess that's why your gardens are getting smaller, so that you don't screw up your back, so you can paint more, right?
Exactly. I mean, I have to prioritize. I am not 30 years old anymore, so.
I wish, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe just share with everybody your Instagram handle, your website, how people can find your work.
Great. Well, thank you for the invitation, Kate. It was a pleasure.
It was really fun. Yeah, I enjoyed getting to know more about you.
Okay, well, have a good day.
Thanks, you too. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so I appreciate that. That was really great. I really enjoyed talking to Danielle, and she can be reached at daniellepare.com, and you can see her, follow her Instagram, which is also Danielle Pare, so that will be kind of fun. And next week we've got Holly Friesen followed by Julie DeBoer. So both landscape painters, but very different styles, so I think you'll really enjoy both of them. And I'm hoping that Julie will also talk a little bit about her mentoring leveling up program, which I think will also be really great. And in a few weeks, we have Litsa Spanos from Blink. I've had a lot of calls and emails and questions about the Blink art book and being part of Blink, which is a book that goes out to art collectors and dealers and art buyers primarily in the US. So anyway, so Litsa's going to come and talk a little bit about her business and how she's kind of created her business with multiple galleries in Cincinnati, the Blink book, and basically how it can potentially help you. So anyway, I'm just going to say thank you so much for joining me. It looks like spring is around the corner, which is super exciting. And I will talk to you next week. If you want to hear about any back episodes, they will be on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/KateTaylorArt. We'll be on Instagram as well as Facebook. And I am slowly in the process of uploading them onto the podcast, Talking to Artists, which is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's just taking longer than I expected to get rid of all my ums. So anyway, have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you later. Okay, bye-bye.